Welcome to Madame Raven's. This way to the library. She's been expecting you.
Well, my darlings, it looks like we have a whole series of the I'm a Magician to catch up with. Perhaps I'll do one every Monday while they're going. Would you guys like that? Today I'm reading I'm a Magician, and I had a run-in with something beyond tricks. I spent the next few days obsessively searching for answers. Alexander Chase, the Mirage, the paranormal circus magician, the boy who burnt a man alive with nothing more than a snap of his fingers and a ghost of a smile. I had seen so much but understood so little. I even began to doubt that what happened at the Mirage Carnival was ever real. The internet offered little help. Alex had a Wikipedia page, but the sections on his background and upbringing were blank. He had a sizable following all over the globe, but no one quite seemed to know anything about him beyond his performances. Theories and speculations floated about, but never any answers. One post on an online forum ranted about how the Mirage Carnival was secretly a cult, dedicated to witchcraft and bloody sacrifice. Following the barely understandable ramblings was a poorly photoshopped picture of a glowing purple pentagram in the circus ring. I rolled my eyes. Despite my best efforts, the only real information I managed to glean about Alex was that he joined the performance scene about 2 years ago, in June of 2012, with a shorter circus performance accompanied by the same troupe. He had said that he had followed all of my work since the Bellagio Escape Act, which was in June of 2002, exactly 10 years before the Mirage became known to the world. 5 minutes remaining. Please use the Game Kit payment tool to add extra hours. I sighed. I had been in the internet cafe for almost 2 hours with nothing to show for it. The punk rock blasted from the speakers, and the kids across the desk wearing bulky headphones and yelling at their screens were starting to make me anxious. I used my last 5 minutes to check the ticket sales on my next couple of public shows, then logged out of the computer and got up to leave. The group of kids slammed their fist on the desk and screamed in victory, almost startling me into spilling my paper cup of tea all over the light-up keyboard. 2 weeks passed, and I was beginning to believe that life was back to normal. I was performing at lavish corporate party for Gateway Technology, a multi-billion-dollar energy company, alongside numerous other performers and musicians. The well-dressed men and women applauded as I took my handkerchief from my breast pocket, set it alight in a flash of flames, and turned it into a snow-white dove that flapped its wings on my fingertips. Outside the giant curved ceiling-to-floor windows behind me was a sunset over glittering streets. All of the venues they could have chosen, the big shots at Gateway had decided to hold the party in a sky-high lounge on the Las Vegas Strip, overlooking the fountains of Bellagio. When 7 o'clock drew near, and the partygoers crowded by the window to watch the fountains start their nightly show, I was approached by a familiar face. An old friend of mine from my big stage days. "Awesome performance, Brian," she said, hefting her giant camera and snapping a photo of me as I put the dove back in its cage. "You've still got it after all these years." "Thanks. Here to catch the celebrity gossip?" "You know it." Have you seen Scarlet Fantasia? She's supposed to be here for late evening shows. Award-winning close-up fantasy act. I laughed. I guess I'm not famous enough for an article anymore, huh? Oh, quit it. You know that's not what I mean. A tall, uniformed security guard came up to us. "Excuse me," he said. "Ma'am, are you on the guest list?" She's with me," I said. The guard furrowed his brow, scrunched up the bespectacled red birthmark running down his forehead. "Please include all visitors in the guest log, Mr. Herring." "My apologies. Please add Topaz Brooks to the log. She's a journalist for this event." The guard nodded grudgingly and walked off. "Thanks, Herring. Really saved me there." "You weren't invited?" "Sometimes I have to stick my nose in places. You think my job is all smooth sailing?" Topaz was a photographer and journalist who specialized in snatching sensational articles on big celebrities and influencers. I met her first after my Bellagio escape act, when she pushed past the crowd to take pictures of me as I walked out of the fountains. I ended up remembering her because she dropped her camera into the water and almost got trampled by the crowds. "I'm glad I'm here," she said as the lights in the room dimmed and the fountains far below lit up with 500-foot spouts of golden mist. "Always a good venue." "Remind you of old times, does it?" "More like it reminds me not to be lazy with my camera strap." As the fountain rose and fell to the music I couldn't hear, I thought back to the shining metal cuffs around my wrists and ankles, the fresh confidence I had back then as they locked my cage and sank me into the water. My heart was pounding and my breath ran out quickly, but I was sure that a minute was all I needed. Just as I emerged from the water and stepped onto the acrylic platform they had built for me, the clock hit 7 o'clock. Ennio Morricone's "The Ecstasy of Gold" played, and the fountains erupted all around me, lit up in a dazzling purple glow. I watched the spouts down below and imagined myself standing amongst them again. "You know why they don't turn on the colored lights anymore?" I asked Topaz. She frowned. "What do you mean?" "The lights. They're just white now. Why don't they do purple like when I was performing, or some other colors?" "The fountains only light up in white, Brian. They probably used one of those giant projectors to add color for your show. It was very exciting, but you don't get to see the projector come out very often." I nodded. Somewhere at the back of my mind, I must have connected the color purple to what happened 2 weeks prior, because I found myself asking questions again. "Hey, Topaz." "Yeah?" "Do you do any articles on Alexander Chase?" "The Mirage?" she exclaimed immediately. "Oh, I wish. I went to so many of his shows trying to net something, anything, but he won't show himself to anyone who isn't performing. He's invited to everything, but shows up to nothing." "Ah, I see. Why do you ask?" "Just curious." Topaz narrowed her eyes. "Just curious, eh? What? You're never curious about other celebrities? There's got to be something more." I pretended to roll my eyes, but I really just needed to look away. Topaz loved to play detective, and she had a knack for it, too. It seemed to help out her career, and she actually managed to expose quite a few scandalous details about some powerful people. But in personal conversation, I didn't exactly want her to pry. The fountain show ended and the lights in the lounge came back up. "I went to his circus," I said, trying to cover for myself. "He's pretty skilled, so I just wanted to know more about him." Topaz made an exaggerated Then she laughed. "All right, Herring, I won't pry. I know you don't like it." I began to say something, maybe to defend myself, But the partygoers on the other side of the room cheered, and Topaz perked up. "Scarlet Fantasia," she said. "She's here." She clutched her camera and bounded off towards the lounge entrance, where a woman in sparkling red dress and high heels had just entered. Scarlet Fantasia, the close-up extraordinaire, broke into media a couple of years ago and became an instant star, quickly working her way up to her recent Academy of Magical Arts award. I remember her from an appearance on TV because she fittingly only wore red dresses, red hats, and red shoes, and because she had a particularly obnoxious laugh that sounded like a dying seagull. Her style seemed far too over the top for me, but I suppose I couldn't talk when she was the main attraction and I'd become a sideshow. I stayed by the windows and sipped on a glass of wine as the crowd cheered, and Fantasia began her performance. "Don't you think she's amazing?" Topaz gushed as she packed up her equipment and I gathered my props. I suppose her skills speak for themselves. No, the whole neuroscience thing. Researcher by day, performer by night. A master's degree and a conference award to match her AMA award, don't you know? I didn't. She's real talent, Bryant. She still publishes papers with the NI and NSF once in a while. That's very impressive. What, are you jealous? No, not at all. We walked out of the exit of the lounge, passing by the tall guard with the birthmark. "Thanks again," Topaz chirped. The guard nodded. "Anyway, Fantasia is really one of those pet projects of mine," she continued. "Can't go into details, of course, but I'm sure she's got something really juicy." At that moment, we brushed past another party guest, and Topaz turned away from me and began talking into the wall next to her. Stuff going on behind the scenes? Something in her research career? At first I thought she was simply looking at something on the wall, but she kept talking as if the wall had suddenly become Brian Herring. "Topaz?" She didn't stop talking. I tapped her shoulder. She didn't look. A chill went down my spine. I looked back the way we came. Standing at the end of the hall was the other guest we had walked past. He was small and lean, dressed in a purple dress shirt and black vest, with a deep violet rose pinned to his lapel. I stopped. Topaz kept walking and talking all the way down the hall to the elevator. The young man in purple smiled thinly. "Alex?" "Hello, Brian." Alex led me to a private meeting room with a coffee table. As I entered behind him, the door swung close, and I heard the click of a lock. "What are you doing here?" I asked as he sat down across from me. "I was invited, just like you," he said. "But you're invited to everything, and you show up to nothing." "That's what Topaz said." Alex smiled. "And it won't be showing up today either. I came to see you, Brian." "Me?" "This is where you inspired me," Alex said. 12 years ago, down by the fountains." His eyes sparkled in the way they had at the Mirage Carnival, when he had laid his hands on the severed crate and breathed in the silence tinged with the scent of blood. Nothing that he said was threatening in any way, but I found myself eyeing the door. Alex traced the tip of his finger along his armrest, and the lights in the room flickered and dimmed. Every room in the building seemed to make the best of the view, and through the ceiling-to-floor window adorned with heavy maroon drapes, I could once again see the fountains at work. Alex stood up and walked to stand by the window, watching the lights fade in and out. After a moment of hesitation, I joined him. That day, at the top of the hour, everyone was holding their breath and waiting, he said quietly. All at once, the crowds upon crowds of people just waiting for you. I will always remember that. I nodded. In the silence, I could hear an echo of the music that accompanied the show, layered with distant sounds of the city far below. It was the ecstasy of gold. "Did you do that?" I asked. Alex smiled and put a finger to his lips. "Listen." We watched in silence until the show ended and the white gold mist stilled the night. "I was there," Alex said, "among the people, lost and confused and alone. I'd never seen the fountains before, and I'd never seen such beautiful magic as I did that evening." I stole a sideway glance at Alex. His eyes were the same vivid purple, and in the city lights his smile was soft. I struggled to remember what he had looked like as he watched the armored man burn to death. I had a million questions. "Alex." High heels clicked down the marble hallway outside. Several more pairs of footsteps followed. Alex tensed. "Hide," he said. "They're here." "What?" Alex pushed me back against the window. Then he produced something small and shiny from his pocket and stabbed it deep into my chest. I choked. The sensation was cold like steel. I scrambled Alex's hand off my chest and stared down at the spot where I'd felt the thing pierce my flesh. But there was nothing there. Not even a tear in my shirt. "Alex, what?" "Silence," he hissed, "and be still." He flicked his hand, and the velvet ribbons holding the drapes at either side of the window came undone. The heavy curtain fell into place, concealing me behind them just as the footsteps reached the door. I stood frozen, staring into the maroon velvet of the curtain that smelled like an old coat closet. Then I heard the door unlock and open. "Alexander Chase," a vaguely familiar voice said, trailing the clicking of heels. "The Mirage. None other. Can I enter?" "You already have," Alex said. His tone was dark, a complete 180. I felt goosebumps spread down my arms. "Indeed," the voice said. "And you must know why I'm here." "Because all you do is interrupt and intervene." "Oh, please. It's time to stop playing your games. I'm here to take you back, Alex." The way she said his name, it was almost as if she would rather call him something else. "You're welcome to try," Alex said. A tense silence hung in the air. Then the woman sighed. "Security found the gateway CFO dead in the parking lot." Alex didn't say anything. "Painted onto the pavement like he had a 100-story fall. They found third-degree burns inside his empty eye sockets, Alex. Do you know what the humans call people like you?" "Magicians," he said quietly. "No," the woman said. "They call people like you murderers, serial killers, psychopaths. Are you aware of these words?" "Don't patronize me. I've lived here longer than you have." "And yet how will you ever belong when you've killed hundreds of people?" My mind was reeling. I was covered in cold sweat. It took me all my willpower not to make a sound. Whoever was at the doorway, there was an entire army of people behind her, shuffling their heavy boots in the hall. "You're a traitor," Alex said in a low voice. "Leave before I make you." The woman in the room laughed. Her laughter was high-pitched and grating, like someone was slowly strangling a seagull. "Scarlet Fantasia." "Oh, Alex," Fantasia said. "You know you could never shake me off your bloody trail. If you think you know pain, you've never once thought about what you've done to your victims." Something began to push on the drapes, slowly making me inch back towards the window. And you have never once thought about what they have done to you. Alec's voice was very close, like he was leaning back against me. To us. Look at you, mutilated just to look like one of them. Alex kept pressing into the drapes, pushing me backwards. It was a sacrifice, Fantasia said. I waited for my back to press against the glass of the window, but it never did. Alex laughed softly and leaned his weight onto me, pushing me out of the window onto the open air, the glass rippling as my body passed through it, like it was made of smoke. Sacrifice, I heard Alex say from the other side of the window, as I felt my feet tip over the ledge. The ever-present smile lingered in his voice. Then I was in free fall, into the glittering city far, far below. I wish I could say I thought of all the beautiful things in life in those seconds before I hit the ground, or that my life flashed before my eyes and I made peace with myself. But truthfully, my mind was completely blank as the lights of the Las Vegas Strip spiraled up at me at breakneck speed. Closer and closer and closer. The desert wind screaming past my ears, alongside the distant sound of police sirens. I saw the pavement where I would land. Hard, unyielding asphalt. Perhaps I thought about death. Then a fraction of a second before the ground came up to meet me, staring at my toes and flashing up to the top of my head, I felt my body burst into thousands and thousands of pieces. Small, thin, fluttering pieces. The last thing I saw before my eyes dissolved too was a cloud of purple rose petals swirling into the air. So quoth this raven. Oh, my darlings, Magpie has once again done such a marvelous job, and there's more to come. Thank you all for coming to visit me today. It means ever so much. And a special thanks to my Patreon supporters, Charlotte Emerson, Ermin Case, Darren and Jennifer, and Laura. If you like this, please hit the little button to let me know. If you didn't, hit the little button to let me know. Leave a comment. I'm always glad to talk with you, my darlings. I'm open to suggestions and criticisms, critiques. If you have not subscribed, please do so and ring the little bell so you know when to come up and see me. And I will talk to you next time, my darlings. Farewell.